All right. I think we will get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining. If you don't know me, I'm Senator Samra Brouk. I proudly represent the 55th Senate District here in the Rochester area, which includes the east side of the city of Rochester, Arundecoit, Webster, Penfield, Perryton, Pittsford, and East Rochester. And I'm just thrilled, absolutely thrilled to welcome you to our first event in our Eclipse Exploration series. And I have to say, thank you so much to Mr. Eclipse himself, Dan Schneiderman from the Rochester Museum and Science Center. Many of you by now have probably heard in some capacity from Dan. He is the Eclipse Partnership Coordinator at the RMSC and, of course, also co-chair of the Rochester Eclipse Task Force. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Dan because he's going to walk us through, again, this first part one of our Eclipse exploration. Dan has over 10 years of experience producing STEAM-based events at festivals all over Rochester, which is where you may have seen him at the Maker Faire Rochester, the New York State Fair, and the first robotics competition. He currently sits on subcommittees, including the National Eclipse Committee, and advises community groups around the country on how to prepare for the upcoming eclipse. And of course, we know that now he has made it his mission in life to literally make sure that everyone under the sun has the chance to experience the 2024 total solar eclipse, and of course, also experience it safely. So we are so lucky to have Dan as a Rochesterian here in our local community, and I'm so grateful for his willingness to partner on this series of webinars. So just to share a little bit about, how this all got started. Obviously, as your state senator, not only am I in Albany working on legislation and funding in our state budget, but also constantly looking at ways that we can incorporate science and other things into our community. And I think especially for any young people who are joining us today, or any parents or grandparents or aunts or uncles of young people, I think this is such a fantastic opportunity to bring our young people in to really understand the gravity, if you will, of learning about science and, of course, STEM. And so when we think of these entry points into learning more about science, I couldn't think of a better one than the solar eclipse. And of course, here in Rochester, we are I don't know the official words, but we're in the path of totality. I think Dan taught me is what it's called. We're in the path of totality for the solar eclipse, which for many of us will be a once in a lifetime experience. And so we just want to make sure that as many people in the Rochester area understand really what this means. And I want you all to be able to experience it with your families. And of course, anyone from outside of Rochester, we want them to come in and see so much of what Rochester has to offer. And so again, I want to thank you all for joining us. I hope you will learn as much as I've learned working with Dan and learning from him over the past few months. And of course, we do have a second part to this webinar, which if you signed up for this one, we'll make sure you get the information. And that will be a little bit more about how to also view it safely closer to that April 8th date. So with that, I will hand it over to Dan Schneiderman to take us away and begin part one of our eclipse exploration.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that kind introduction and for organizing this. Our main goal for the eclipse has been to really get the word out. This is such a rare occasion to have in our own backyard that we are just so excited. I'm going to go and share my screen right now, making sure everything is shared. So, as the senator kindly introduced me, I am Dan Schneiderman. I am the Eclipse Partnership Coordinator at your Rochester Museum and Science Center. We have been working on preparing for the eclipse for years and years, and longer than you would think. We started thinking about the eclipse right after 2017. And if you were to talk to our previous planetarium director, Steve Fentress, he was even talking about it as far back as 2012. So to kind of jump right in, as all of you know, the total solar eclipse is this year. We are less than 6 weeks away. As of right now, we are only 38 days away from totality. Oh, and just as a quick note for everyone, If you have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A. I will be answering everything at the end of the talk. So here's the 5-second science of what an eclipse is. Moon in front of sun casts giant shadow. All of us are in that shadow. That's the quick version, but let's start diving in a bit more. Here is what the view should look like on April 8th at 3:20 p.m. It is going to be quite the sight. As you can see here, we have this almost velvety hole in the middle of the sky. That is the moon blocking out that sun. That little bit of light that you see surrounding it, that is the sun's outer atmosphere, or the corona. And you see this little, little bit of light? That is a star. It actually does get dark enough to see some stars. There are different types of solar eclipses out there. There are partial eclipses, which a lot of you might remember from 2017 or in 2021, where only a part of the sun is blocked. There are annular eclipses when the moon does completely move in front of the sun, but because of its orbit, there are times where it's slightly closer to us, and there are times when it's slightly further away from us. And when it's ever so slightly further away, from our perspective, it looks just a little bit smaller, and it doesn't completely block out the sun. We end up with this lovely ring of fire surrounding the moon during an annular eclipse. You might remember we did have an annular eclipse in the United States back in October of 2023. And for those of you who might remember, we had one here in Rochester back in 1994. And then we have the main show, a total solar eclipse, when the moon is closer to us and fully obscures the sun's disk. It is going to be a sight like you've never seen before. Now, the reason why we are even able to have the total solar eclipse is due to some very lucky math and geometry. So while the sun might be 400 times larger than the moon is 400 times closer to us. So from our perspective here on Earth, they are about the same size. You actually might have been able to see both of them at the same time, or at least looking back and forth in the sky earlier this week when we had a full moon. Now, to kind of put this into a bit more of a easy to understand perspective, if you were to say take a 10-foot inflatable sun or even a 10-foot round tablecloth, that would be the sun. Earth in scale to that would be about an inch, and the moon would only be a quarter of an inch. The Earth and the moon would be about 3 feet apart, but the Earth to the sun is about 1,074 feet. Or, to give you another idea, it's approximately the distance between East Ave and Park Ave. We realized this after doing the math, and we decided to actually recreate it. So on our grounds, you might note that we have a park in the back of the RMSC. So we have that 10-foot sun all the way back there. And here we are 1,074 feet away, locking it out with a quarter of an inch moon. To give you another idea is I want you to, in your house or wherever you are, stick out your thumb in front of you and either block out a family member, a friend, or a light. If you can fully block it out, well, this is you blocking something out that is hopefully larger than your thumb, but because your thumb's a lot closer to you, well, it looks like it can block just about any object out, at least relatively. This is exactly how the eclipse happens. From our perspective, yes, the moon is about the same size and can actually block out the sun. One thing we're actually, you get to see the premiere of is we have a new video that we should be premiering very soon online, explain why we don't see an eclipse more often.
We get a solar eclipse when the moon passes between the Earth and the sun, and its shadow crosses over the surface of the Earth. But if it takes a little less than a month for the moon to go around the Earth, have you ever wondered, why don't we get a solar eclipse once a month? Most times that the moon passes between the Earth and the Sun, the shadow left by the moon either goes completely above or below the Earth. When geometry allows, the shadow will pass directly over the Earth. And, if we are very lucky, the shadow might pass directly over where we are on the Earth, like it will on April 8th, 2024 here in Rochester, New York.
So I also like to point out that this video was created by our new RMSC Strassenberg Planetarium director, Jim Bader, who you can now see on a regular basis here. Total solar eclipses do happen more often than you might think somewhere on Earth. They happen about every 18 to 24 months. The average time for any given location to experience a total solar eclipse twice is about 375 to 400 years. There are outliers out there, like our friends in Carbondale, Illinois. It's about 5 hours south of Chicago. They are some of the very few lucky people to experience a total solar eclipse in 2017, and we'll get to experience it again in 2024. Here in Rochester, our average is about 100 to 120 years. You know, cosmically, we're fairly lucky. We're much below the average. But from a human perspective, not so great. So what will you actually observe on April 8th, 2024? Well, number one, you'll see the moon blocking out the sun. It won't be midnight out. It'll be dark, but I want you to think more like a deep dusk. Think, these gorgeous deep blues. If you were to look at the horizon, you might notice a 360-degree sunset. Jupiter and Venus should be fairly easy to spot in the sky. You might even see some of the brightest of stars. The one constellation I encourage everyone to look for is Orion, which, you can look at almost any night right now, whenever we have clear skies. And then we have the diamond ring effect and Baily's beads. Because the moon is not a perfectly smooth surface and there are craters and valleys, during the last couple of seconds, right as the moon is obscuring the sun's disk, little bits of light escapes, and it almost looks like it's dancing on the edge of the moon. We also have the diamond ring effect, which is that initial burst of light as we enter totality of just the sun being completely obscured, or at least the sun's disk being obscured. It is, when you see this happen, you will hear a cheer from the crowd. To give you an idea of what this will actually look like over the 2.5-hour span, this is very much sped up, but here's how the moon will actually cover up the sun. It doesn't quite look like the graphics that you might see online where it takes away a little chunk in a perfect horizontal line. It has a curve to it, and that's just because of the motion of the sun, the moon, and the earth to each other. So how dark will it get outside? Well, as I mentioned, it's, more of a deep twilight. And to give you a better idea, here are two different photos of a solar eclipse, of a total solar eclipse. One, which is seen with a filter, for which if you are taking a photo, you are definitely going to want a filter on your camera. That even goes for phones. And without a filter, this is during totality. Here's a better idea of like that deep, that darker blue and that sunset. To give you another example, well, here's how fast it actually gets darker. So the whole experience will start around 2:07 when the moon starts to cover up the sun. It actually takes a long time before it actually starts to feel darker out. It's not until maybe about 10 minutes before that you start to really notice it, but really the main show is in that last minute or so as we enter totality, when it all of a sudden becomes dark out. To show you this in action, here is, I'm gonna show this video. Here is a video from the 2017 total solar eclipse by the RMSC Strassenberg Planetarium previous director, Steve Fentress, that he took during his travels to totality. This is us just entering totality. You can see it get fairly dark out. You can see automatic lights turning on in the background, and it is fairly dark. I'm going to actually skip ahead to about here because seconds. You can see us exiting totality, and it becomes bright very, very quick. You don't realize how strong our sun is until you experience a total solar eclipse, because the amount of light that returns with even the tiniest of slivers is incredible. This is playing at real time. It just got that bright out that fast. So the eclipse isn't just a visual experience, but it is a physical one as well. During totality, the temperature will drop by about 10 degrees. Animals and plants will act as if it was nighttime. Birds back to their nest, cows back to their barn. I'm personally curious to see how a lot of deer will react. For those of you with cats and dogs and wondering, hey, how will my pets react? Don't worry. Your dogs are just going to be happy to see you. They're probably not going to stare up at the sun, as they normally don't do that anyhow. And cats, the worst I could see is maybe getting upset that their sunspot disappeared. If you're to look at the ground, your shadow is going to become incredibly sharp as we enter totality or get close to it. You might even notice shadows that don't seem to have any area that they're coming from. These are shadow bands, which are caused by refraction from Earth's atmosphere and the turbulence going on. But the main thing that you'll notice is how eerily still it becomes. I've heard accounts of people saying that they were by the water and all of a sudden lakes and oceans just kind of came to a standstill. The hair on the back of your neck might stand up. I've heard accounts of people, cheering at the beginning of totality and then just kind of letting everything else just go quiet. Some people have started laughing, some crying. Others have even said that everything just melts away except for the sun, the moon, the earth, and themselves. You're just kind of overcome with this sense of awe and wonder. It is an incredibly powerful feeling. And you can understand why some people thought that it might have been the end of the world millennia ago. But it is just quite a moving experience. If you want to start planning ahead, which I recommend everyone does, to get an idea where the eclipse will take place in the sky, I want you to look about south-southwest, 45 degrees up. So about midway up the sky. On the day of the eclipse, all you're going to have to do is honestly put on your eclipse glasses and look where the sun is. As I mentioned earlier, you should be able to see Jupiter and Venus. Jupiter a little bit higher up into the south, Venus a little bit lower down on the horizon and to the west. If you are at a high enough vantage point, you might even be able to see Saturn and Mars as well. One thing I don't point out here, though, it is still out there. There will be a comet out that you might be able to see during totality. But honestly, if this is your first total solar eclipse, as it is for I would say a majority of folks, I wouldn't go searching for it. There's other times to view comets in the sky. So this is definitely the number one question I get asked now on a daily basis, and is probably on a lot of our minds. We all know our weather here in Rochester. What happens if it's cloudy? Well, here's the thing. We have no control over the sun, the moon, the earth, or the weather. No matter what, the eclipse is still going to happen, and it will still get dark. In fact, it will be noticeably more dark out. I want you to imagine, honestly, the last couple of days at sunrise. 2 days ago, gorgeous day, barely a cloud in the sky at sunrise. It felt very bright, even before the sun has really risen. And then I want you to think about this morning, as it was dark out, admittedly not as fun. Very cloudy, a bit overcast. But if you were to look at the same time as sunrise, well, it felt darker out. The same concept can apply to a total solar eclipse. Cloud-wise, honestly, we are better than you would think. I want you to think about some of the weather patterns that we have even seen very much in the last year or so. When you think about where we are in Lake Ontario and where we are compared to some of our friends. The lake helps us much more than you would think. So while our friends in Buffalo and Syracuse might get, 2, 3, 4, 5 feet of snow, there are times when they get that and we barely get an inch. In Rochester, the possibility of clouds is lower than you would think, and we're honestly one of the best views out there for upstate, for New York State and the East Coast. Cleveland does have a slightly better chance compared to us over the last 20 years of weather data. A lot of people, yes, will be going to Texas. It is still their raining season. And then honestly, a lot of people are going out to Mexico if they have the ability to. But here in New York State, honestly, we have one of the best probabilities of fewer clouds. And here's the thing. Yeah, if you were to look over the last 20 years, we have some data points that look like this. Yes, I will point out a single data point does not make a pattern, but I really do love this data point. This was April 8th, 2023. If some of you, as some of you might remember, it was a clear day, barely a cloud in the sky, 40 to 50 degrees, perfect weather. There was a couple of us running around Rochester, even promoting, hey, the eclipse is coming 1 year out. If you're to look over the past decade or so, we've even had days like this either on April 8th or near April 8th with sunny skies and perfect weather. We've seen this even the past week. Admittedly, this February has been a bit crazy with us having temperatures in the mid-60s, sunny days. I know a lot of us at the RMSC have gone outside quite a bit more or found our excuses to eat lunch out there because it's just been gorgeous. This is some of the weather data over the last 50 years. I tend to go more off of the last 20 years. And yeah, we still only have about a 50 to 60% chance of either a clear to mostly cloudy day. There is a reason why I say even mostly cloudy is okay. And that's because, well, historically, there have been cloudy days during total solar eclipses, and things have worked out for the better. This video, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and mute it once again. This is Homestead National Monument in 2017. It was fully in the path of the total solar eclipse back then. There was 20,000 people out there. Admittedly, Bill and I, the science guy, was there, so that could cause 20,000 people. And if you were to look at the background, you can see heavy clouds and rain. In fact, they had thunderstorms earlier in the day. A lot of these people are probably soaking wet from some of the rain. But if we look, you can see it's still fairly cloudy out. But now I'm going to go ahead and jump a little bit. As we enter totality, some of the clouds are disappearing. And to even jump ahead a little bit more, at the last possible seconds, the clouds parted and they were still able to see totality. Even though they got poured on, even though there was thunder, they were still able to see. This video is widely available on YouTube if you care to listen in. It's a lot of fun. You can see some of the crowd reactions, which are just fantastic. There's that 360-degree sunset, and you can still see heavy rain going on back there. This could happen here in Rochester. Let's take an eagle eye view of the eclipse. This is NASA's official map for the annular eclipse that took place in October and the upcoming total solar eclipse. As you can see here, this one went mostly through the Midwest and the West Coast. The upcoming eclipse, well, back in 2017, it was from coast to coast and was called the Great American Eclipse. This time it's the Great North American Eclipse, as it touches our friends in Mexico and in Canada as well. Here are one of my favorite maps of the Great American Eclipse. This is all of the major cities within the path. As you can see up here in Buffalo and Rochester, and even Cleveland, we are closer to the center of that path. Compared to some cities like Austin and San Antonio, which will actually be cut in half with getting to see the eclipse or not. Let's zoom in a little bit more into New York. Everywhere in between these two blue lines will get to experience totality. The closer you are to that red line, the longer it will be. For those who want to be directly on that red line, it goes right through SUNY Brockport, and it actually goes through one of their football fields. There's a couple other things I love pointing out about this map. I want you to think about everyone you interacted with today. Everyone you drove by, everyone you ran into at work, every student in school, their teachers, their friends, their families, your neighbors, the complete strangers that you interacted with or saw by you. Every single one of them will get to experience totality. When was the last time you could say that millions of other people were all looking up and experiencing something positive as you? This is just one of those incredible moments. I also like pointing out some other things. I'm not going to go too much into it, but what connects Cleveland, Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse? I-90. We're expecting a lot of people to be traveling on I-90 that day, and we'll be talking a lot more about it on April 3rd during the next webinar. Other things to point out here is that it misses Toronto, New York City, Boston, DC, a lot of downstate, New York City completely. We are expecting a lot of these people to come into the greater Rochester region, and we have actually already seen people say, hey, they're traveling in, they've given us a heads up, and it's just fantastic. These numbers are for right here at the RMSC. This is for the 14607 zip code. We'll talk about why everything will be different in just a moment. So here at the RMSC, the eclipse will start at 2:06 p.m. in 58 seconds. That is when the moon will first start to cover up the sun. Totality will kick off at 3:20 p.m. and will last for 3 minutes and 38 and a half seconds. After totality, when the moon slowly starts to move away from the sun, the whole thing will end at 4:33 p.m. Now, totality is very dependent on where you are standing. As I showed a couple slides ago, the closer you are to that center line, the longer it is, while the further away from it, the shorter it becomes. We can kind of see this in a couple different ways. First, I have to bring this up because I have been asked, hey, if I was to travel on I-90 and drove really, really fast, could I keep up with the shadow? The general answer is no. In general, you shouldn't do that. But the moon shadow goes from one end of the state to the other in about 11 to 12 minutes. That shadow is traveling somewhere between 2,200 and 2,700 miles per hour. It just rapidly crosses New York State. You absolutely could not keep up with it. One other thing to note is if you are on the edge of the path of totality, as you can see here with this red line, well, that's where things get tricky. On the top of a majority of the Finger Lakes, they are all within the path of totality. Lakeville getting over 3 minutes, Canandaigua just under, Geneva just over 2 minutes. Auburn, it starts dropping down as it's closer to the edge. Naples, even less than 2 minutes. And then in Penn Yan, it's closer to about 39 seconds, and it very much depends on where you are standing. I at one point gave a talk out there. Where we were at the talk was in the path of totality. Where we went for their holiday party 5 minutes down the road was not. You should very much know where you're going to be in the path. For which I do also have to say 99.9% coverage of the sun is not totality. Yes, the temperature will probably still drop a little bit. It will be an incredible sight, still get a bit dark, but it's just not the same. The favorite way that it's been described out there is imagine driving to Walt Disney World and turning around at the front gate. You go in, you park, and then you just head right back. That's not to say you won't get a good view, but it's not the only, it's just not totality. To give you an idea, this is about 94-95% of the sun's disk being covered, and this is 99.39% of the sun being covered. The tricky bit with this is if you were to observe it, you would have to wear your eclipse glasses the entire time. During totality, you can actually remove your eclipse glasses and look up. This is something we are encouraging and that you can do. But you must have your glasses on before totality ends and not until it starts. To find out how long the eclipse will last where you are located, there's a couple great online maps out there. We have more listed on our website. And if you are looking for educational materials, I do want to say timeanddate.com has some great graphics and great posters for you to print out. As a very quick history lesson, the first total solar eclipse that I tend to think of with this area is started in 1806. There is one I do love mentioning that took place beforehand, which happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago, that according to oral tradition, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy was actually founded under, and that took place in now Victor. The last time Rochester had a total solar eclipse was back in 1925. The fun thing to point out from that eclipse is they were talking about it in the Democratic Chronicle back then, and on January 24th, 1925, the day of the total solar eclipse, people went outside, they used smoke glass, school groups brought people out, and if you were to look in the DNC in one paragraph, they mentioned the upcoming eclipse in 2024. They were talking about us 99 years ago. A lot of you might remember the last total solar eclipse in 2017. I'm sure there are some people here even got to go out and see it. But let's look forward. Technically, there's a total solar eclipse in Alaska in 2033. There's one that hits Montana and the Dakotas in 2044, but the next major total solar eclipse will happen in 2045, 21 years from now, and we'll only get about 50% of the sun being covered here in Rochester. The next time it hits New York State won't happen until 2079. It hits more downstate. We get about 90% of the sun covered, almost an inverse compared to this upcoming eclipse. But Rochester, we have to wait 120 years until 2144 for the next time we get to have a total solar eclipse in our own backyard. And even then, it will only last 46 seconds. My favorite way to think about that amount of time is if a kid is born on the April 8th, 2024 eclipse, their grandkid's kid, or more likely, grandkid's grandkid, will be around to see that total solar eclipse. Cosmically, that's a short amount of time, but from the human perspective, it is generations. A quick note about safety, and we're going to go much more into detail during the next webinar. You must use solar viewing glasses or eclipse glasses whenever you are looking directly at the sun, except during totality. That is the only case ever that you should ever look at the sun anytime. Sunglasses do not work. If you are buying your glasses online, please, please, please double check that they are in alignment with the American Astronomical Society Eclipse website, and I can put the link into the chat before we end this webinar. Back in 2017, there was a number of problems with counterfeit glasses, and we have seen that already for 2024. Eclipse glasses are not the only way to view the eclipse, and for which I also do have a pair with me right now. There are other methods to view it. I'm sure a lot of you have made a pinhole projector in school at one point or another. A lot of you made them back in 2017. A lot of people tend to think of them using cardboard boxes, but this isn't the only way. Using the same technique, you can use a colander. The trick is not to hold it up and look through it at the sun, but hold it down to see what's projected onto another surface. This image right here is a colander used back in 2017. The same thing can also be done using your hands by interlocking them, by looking at a pegboard. You can even use a hole punch and an index card, or you can use other items from around your kitchen, like Ritz crackers or saltines. Because they have small little holes, you can actually use them as pinhole projectors, and then have a snack after the eclipse. If you are looking for glasses, we have them at the RMSC. You can now find them at a lot of your local libraries, though some of them are waiting till a little bit closer to the eclipse to give them out. You can find them at rec centers, and we have a whole map of where you can find them on RochesterEclipse2024.org. More and more places are being added every day. Here are some of those other techniques. So we have the colander, a slotted spoon, and the hands being interlocked. You can see those, the sun being slightly blocked out by the moon. And yet again, please do not use sunglasses. If you were to wear eclipse glasses, you'll notice the only thing you'll ever be able to see is maybe the brightest of filaments and then the sun. They block out approximately 99.9% of light. Sunglasses just are not strong enough. And if you see someone using them, please go over to them and kindly say, hey, that's not safe. One other thing I'd like pointing out with eclipse glasses, you're probably not going to be wearing them the entire time of the eclipse. That phase between first contact and totality is about 1 hour and 13 minutes. That's a long period of time for you to be looking straight up. I recommend taking turns with other family members and passing them around. Sharing is caring for the eclipse. If you are looking to take photos with your smartphones, if you're doing it with a regular camera, I recommend investing in a filter. If you're using your phone, this is actually a photo we took earlier this week, just by taking a pair of eclipse glasses and taping them to the phone and then pointing them in the general direction. Yet again, please be careful as you do this, as you do not want to accidentally look at the sun. If you are looking for more information before the April 3rd webinar, or for resources, or for events, or any other eclipse-related item, Rochester Eclipse 2024 has most of the data for the entire region. We are collecting as many events as possible. We're collecting as many eclipse glasses locations as possible. We have activities for every ages and other resources. And if you are looking for something to be added, we are trying to get more and more information posted. With that, as a reminder, save the date. We're going to be talking about safety. We're going to be talking about logistics and how you can celebrate at home. With that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and open it up for questions. So I'm going to start going through the Q&A. So I'm answering these live. My out-of-town guests and I want to enjoy the eclipse to the utmost. We have tickets to the RPO Eclipse concert and plan to make an eclipse cake. How might we enjoy the event otherwise? There are tons of festivals and viewing events. There's tastings, there's 5Ks, there's euchre tournaments, there's concerts. We're even having a festival here at the RMSC, Rock the Eclipse. There's tons of ways the entire region is going to be celebrating. How is the eclipse calculated so they know when this will occur? Eclipses follow they're extremely predictable. Eclipse patterns happen about every 18 years 11 days and 8 hours. And there's all sorts of patterns, so we know exactly when eclipses will happen. That's why we know that the next eclipse here won't be till 2144. See, if you are taking a photo of the eclipse, I was just asked, how do you take photos? You're going to want a filter on your camera. Some people have hooked them up to telescopes, which if you do that, you're going to want the filter on the telescope, because you should never really aim your phone, your camera, or a telescope directly at the sun without having a filter on the end. This is very much to protect your equipment. I have known people to sacrifice cameras to this. I wouldn't recommend it. Just going through. People asking if you need special adapters. If you are doing a adapter to your camera to a telescope, yes. There are a lot of those out there. If you are totally blind, do you need solar glasses? That is a very good question, and I don't know. In general, probably to prevent any additional damage. There are other methods to view the eclipse for the blind and visually impaired community. There are devices, I wish I had mine on me right now, but it's being lent out, called light sound devices. They're open source. They have a long-range light sensor or high-range light sensor that translate the amount of light available to see into sound. It's been programmed to basically tune it into almost like crickets. It's very musical. It's highly recommend. There's also phone apps out there that do the same thing. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a very physical thing as well. Just going through these questions we've already answered. Clouds, will Quebec City, I believe I would need to double check the map. Is it worth going on a plane to see the eclipse? Some people do this. There's actually been a couple articles in the last week or so. Yes, it is. I have known people to go on planes for the eclipse so that they get above the clouds. They maybe get a second or two more of totality, but not really. Back in 2017, this is actually how NASA kicked off their live stream, was from an airplane, and then, sending that footage to YouTube so that anyone can tune in. How can we calculate totality times? I am actually going to bring up one of the maps in just a moment. There's a couple maps out there. The one I tend to use more, and I gotta re-add it to the website. And I will toss this link in chat. Do not worry that it is such a weird one. This is from a French astronomer who has created these wonderful interactive maps. I gotta share my screen. Where all you have to do is click on the individual location, for example, Henrietta, and you can see how long totality will last. So here, 3 minutes and 32 seconds. And you can see when the partial eclipse starts and when it ends. So, to give you an example yet again, Penyan, depending on where you click in Penyan, will have like 57 seconds. You can zoom in quite a large amount with this map. I'll stop sharing. Oh, hold on. I think I only sent that. I didn't send that to everyone. Here it is to everyone. Let me look back at the questions. Where can you get special eclipse filters for binoculars? I recommend checking out the same telescope websites. There's also the people who manufacture eclipse glasses who produce them. So Rainbow Symphony, American Paper Optics, eclipseglasses.com, all of those are great sites. Why do you need eclipse glasses? That is because sunglasses are just not strong enough. Honestly, let me put this in front of, so here's the back. I will put this in front, the filter. You probably don't see anything behind me right now, or me whatsoever, and that's because they're being completely blocked out. That green light you saw a second ago was honestly it reflecting the light off of my camera. I also do not recommend, please do not drive while wearing eclipse glasses or walk around while wearing them. It's very similar to putting a blindfold on. What can happen to your eyes if you do not use proper protection? You can actually damage your eyes a little bit. You might have an after image if you stare too long. You can do longer permanent damage. Is there an eclipse on the Earth every day of the year? There's not an eclipse every day, but eclipses do happen every couple months. They're not always total solar eclipses, and the Earth just has so much water on its surface. They're not always in easy to get or populated areas. Someone's asked, will welders' glasses work? Yes, grades 13 and 14 are the recommended versions. Someone's asked if it's good to be in the planetarium or outside. Honestly, I can tell you at the RMSC Strassenberg Planetarium, we'll be getting people outside. We won't allow anyone inside the planetarium during that time. Someone asked, yes, I did kind of skip going over the scientific terms of the shadow, which is the umbra and the penumbra. We will be in the umbra, which is those in totality. The name for people who chase eclipses are called umbraphiles. Just trying to see if there's any other parts of the country will get partial eclipses. That's one of the great bits about the total solar eclipse is that no matter where you are in the entire US, even in Alaska and Hawaii, they will still see an eclipse. Yes, it might be partial, but it is still an incredible view. One of my favorite things about this upcoming total solar eclipse is it is such a positive shared event that hundreds of millions of people will get to experience all together just by going outside. Someone asked me about merchandise. Yes, we do have hoodies like this at the RMSC. Tons of people are producing merchandise across the greater Rochester region. I've even been collecting what other people have been producing, from hoodies to shirts, other people's eclipse glasses. There are mugs out there. I like to point out the Rochester connection that even Susan B. Anthony has a quote around eclipses. I would have to find the tab, but I'm pretty sure it was like, observe solar eclipse delightful, or something very similar to that. There is no best, someone has asked, what is the best place to watch the eclipse? There is, as long as you are in the path of totality, you are in the best place to observe it. Some people prefer viewing it from a festival. Some people prefer being out in nature. The main thing I recommend, and we'll talk a lot about this in April, is be with the ones you want to observe it with. Be with the people you care about. Be with the people who mean the most to you, if at all possible. I know even being at the RMSC, I am going to be next to my wife and holding my daughter because I want to share the experience with them. Someone asked me how many total solar eclipses I have personally seen. None. This is honestly my first total. I had seen a couple partials, but never a total. Someone has asked, can one damage their eyes from reflections off water? As long as you're wearing your eclipse glasses during the partial phases, nope. The sun is no more dangerous than any other given day. There's nothing different about it. There's nothing really different about the reflections compared to any other day, except for the moon's directly in front of it. If it's rainy or cloudy, will we experience anything? Yes, the temperature will still drop. It will still get dark out. It will still be quite the experience. Oh, someone misheard me when I said grade 13 or 14. It's not about schools. It's about type of welding mass. People are wondering about, should you avoid trees or buildings? I like to remind people it is still early April. Most of the trees won't have leaves on them. I do recommend not standing in front of a evergreen or some tall buildings, but it should still be a great time. Is the seminar tape? Yes, we are in fact recording. I believe this will be posted to YouTube later on. I think I've covered a majority of the questions. If anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to reach out. Please have them ready for the next webinar. I'm sure we will have quite a number of folks. Trying to see. I think we've covered a majority of these questions. In that case, I will turn it back to the senator, to Senator Brook. But please feel free to keep adding in questions. We will try to add these to the website as well. Oh, and I will make sure to put the Rochester Eclipse website in.
Thank you so much to everybody who attended. Thank you so much to Dan for giving us such an amazing presentation. Again, please join us for webinar 2 on April 3rd. And you can find it on our social media. You can sign up at Brouk. Actually, I will just drop it in the chat. It's a lot easier for me to do that.
Just grab
sign up
it
with the
right
link.
now.
Thank you so much. The registration link is in the chat, and we look forward to seeing everyone on April 3rd. Thank you again, everyone.